guys, so my name is Sky and today I thought I would tell you about some of my favourite ever books. So in that situation where you're stuck for a book, here are my recommendations, and if you've got your own recommendations, drop them in the comments below. So to be honest, I haven't read a book in a while. All these books I'm talking about are my favourite books from when I was like 14. So the first one that always stands out in my mind is Saving Daisy by Phil Earle. I kid you not, it is so dramatic and I cried all the way through. I was sat on my sunbed on holiday crying. Even though it wasn't necessarily a sad thing, it was more of an emotional thing. I do believe it's actually the sequel to Phil Earle's book called Being Billy, which I read as well, and Being Billy is also equally good. It's such an easy read, so give them both a try. Daisy's mum is gone. Her dad refuses to talk about it. As far as Daisy's concerned, it's all her fault. As her life starts to spiral out of control, panic leads to tragedy and Daisy's left alone. But sometimes the kindness of a stranger can turn things around. A stranger who desperately wants to save Daisy, if only she'll let herself be saved. And the blurb for Being Billy is, faces flashed before my eyes, and for every face there was a time that they had let me down. Each punch that landed was revenge, my chance to tell them that I hadn't forgotten what they did. 8 years in a care home makes Billy Finn a professional lifer, and Billy's angry with the system, the social workers, and the mother that gave him away. As far as Billy's concerned, he's on his own. His little brother and sister keep him going, though they can't keep him out of trouble. But he isn't being difficult on purpose. Billy's just being Billy. He can't be anything else, can he? So you get from both those blurbs that it is based in real life, but it's also to do with very like troubled kids, and it's such an important message. So if anybody ever asks me what my favourite books are, the first three I always say are Saving Daisy, Cruel Summer and Watership Down. Cruel Summer was written by somebody called Juno Dawson, but has now changed the name to Juno Dawson, and the blurb is, a year after the suicide of one of their friends, the rest of the group decide to spend the summer together in a holiday villa in the Mediterranean. They're hoping to get over the terrible events of the previous year, but then a new guest arrives, claiming to have evidence that the suicide was actually a murder. When she is found dead, it becomes clear that the killer must be one of them, but who is it, and will they strike again? So this is a murder mystery and it looks at every single person's perspective, and honestly it's shocking. I have never found a book like this again. I did read One of Us is Lying, which was meant to be a murder mystery like that. However, the ending of that book is such a cop-out. I do not recommend it. Please do not read that. Read Cruel Summer instead, because Cruel Summer is not a cop-out. It is true to what it says. And then if you're really stuck for a book to read, I can give you 13, 14, can't even remember how many's in it, but A Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. You must have heard of it. I did find by the time I got onto like book 6 and 7 it was a bit repetitive and boring, but it was also worth reading, if you know what I mean. And then another series like that, you've also got The Hunger Games. I don't like sci-fi things like that, but I did really enjoy The Hunger Games. I didn't expect to, and I loved it. 16-year-old Katniss Everdeen regards it as a death sentence when she is forced to represent her district in the annual Hunger Games, a fight to the death on live TV. But Katniss has been close to death before, and survival for her is second nature. So obviously that's not that realistic to this day and age, but it is really interesting. I also really like Divergent. In a future where society is divided into 5 distinct factions based on personality traits, Beatrice, Tris, Pryor undergoes a test to determine which faction she belongs to. Afterwards, she finds out she meets the criteria for more than one and is therefore divergent, a rare occurrence which puts her and others like her in danger. Her secret is known only to a small number of people, and she is forced to make a decision about which faction to join. In the end, she opts for Dauntless, a faction made up of the brave, and as she undergoes initiation, her fellow members begin to grow suspicious of her and her behaviour. On top of this, she also uncovers a plot by another faction's leader to seek out and destroy all Divergent, knowledge which makes the potential threat of exposure all the more dangerous. So The Hunger Games and Divergent are both a series, so you get a few books to read then. If you give one a try and you like it, you end up with a few more to read. The Hunger Games is by Suzanne Collins and Divergent is by Veronica Roth. I would also say that my 4th favourite book is Wonder. So probably not going to pronounce this right. Wonder is by R.J. Palacio, but the chapters in this book are so short. Like each chapter is literally a page or 2 pages long. Once you start reading it, you can't really put it down because it's like, oh, I'll just read another page because it's another chapter. You will go through that book so quickly, but again, it's got such an important message. It's really worth the read. So the blurb: my name is August. I won't describe what I look like. Whatever you're thinking, it's probably worse. Augie wants to be an ordinary 10-year-old. He does ordinary things, eating ice cream, playing on his Xbox. He feels ordinary inside, but ordinary kids don't make other ordinary kids run away screaming in playgrounds. Ordinary kids aren't stared at wherever they go. Born with a terrible facial abnormality, Oggy has been homeschooled by his parents his whole life. Now for the first time he's being sent to a real school. All he wants is to be accepted, but can he convince his new classmates that he's just like them underneath it all? So that is literally a book about don't judge a book by its cover, about bullying children. It's actually been made into a film now, and we all know the best books are made into films. Likewise, The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas by John Boyne has also been made into a film now. I'm sure you'll know what it's about, but I'll read the blurb anyway. Bruno doesn't like his new house. He had to leave all his friends behind in Berlin, and there are no children to play with here until Bruno meets probably not pronouncing that right, a boy who lives on the other side of the wire fence near Bruno's house and who wears a strange uniform of striped pyjamas. It's basically about a little boy and his family who move away from his original home due to his father's job, which he doesn't know that much about. There's not that many people around, and one day he meets another little boy who is behind a wire fence and he can't really get in, and they can't play together properly, but they can talk to each other. And Bruno is fascinated because this boy wears striped pyjamas, and he tells him stories about all these other people behind the wire fence that also wear striped pyjamas. It's all about the innocence of a young mind that doesn't understand what's going on, and obviously as readers we do know what happened, what was actually happening. If you do like books like The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas, you may also want to try The Book Thief. This is the tale of the book thief as narrated by Death, and when Death tells you a story you really have to listen. It's just a small story really about, amongst other things, a girl, an accordionist, some fanatical Germans, Jewish fist fighter, and quite a lot of thievery. So this book is basically written from Death's perspective, and it is around World War II, the time of the Holocaust and things like that. The last time I read this was about 7 years ago. I really can't remember too well, but I believe it's about a little girl and she hides a Jewish man in her basement or something like that. I did struggle to read it. I struggled to get into it. It wasn't an easy read. There are other books that are easier to read, but I'm also proud that I have read it because it is an important book and I do believe you should read it in your lifetime. Another book I'm proud to have read is Watership Down. Again, I listed it as one of my favourites. It's by Richard Adams, and this book took me about 6 months to read. That's because I read like a few pages for about 3 months, put it down, then picked it back up again, and then once I picked it up that next time it was the Easter holidays and I got through it quite quickly. So if you sit down and read it, you will be able to follow it properly. And like some of these other books, Watership Down is actually also a film now, and they recreated it recently as well. It is a good book. Set in the once idyllic rural landscape of the south of England, Watership Down follows a band of very special creatures on their flight from the intrusion of man and the destruction of their home as they head towards a mysterious promised land. So basically there's this little rabbit who lives in a warren with lots of other rabbits. He's called Fiver, and then he gets this mysterious feeling or vision one day that they all need to leave. Something bad is gonna happen. So he tells everybody to leave. Everybody just looks at him like, no, we're happy here, this is our home, we're not just gonna go up and leave because you've done that. But there were some rabbits that believed him and they took the risk and they left the warren, and then yes, Fiver's feeling was correct. So then it's just about their journey away from that warren to find a new home that's going to be safe for them to live, and about their adventure along the way. The only thing I would say about this book is it can get a bit confusing because there are a lot of characters. They're all rabbits, so they all seem very similar. It's not like it's a dog, a cat, a fox. And obviously also because it's an old style book, if you get an old copy of it, the chapters aren't really on new pages. It's like there's a new chapter halfway down the page. It's like, oh. And if you're just fancying a quick read, you could always read The Deepest Cut by Natalie Flynn, which is about mental health. Adam blames himself for his best friend's death. After attempting suicide, he is put in the care of a local mental health facility. There, too traumatised to speak, he begins to write notebooks detailing the events leading up to Jake's murder, trying to understand who is really responsible and cope with how needless it was as a petty argument spiralled out of control and peer pressure took hold. That's one of those books where it sort of unfolds the past as it goes forward, if you know what I mean. Not one of my favourites, but worth a read. Also, Only Ever Yours by Louise O'Neill. Frida and Isabel have been best friends their whole lives. Now, aged 16 and in their final year at the school, they expect to be selected as companions, wives to wealthy and powerful men. The alternative, life as a concubine, is too horrible to contemplate. But as the intensity of the final year takes hold, the pressure to be perfect mounts. Isabel starts to self-destruct, putting her beauty, her only asset, in peril. And then into this sealed all-female environment, the boys arrive, eager to choose a bride. Frida must fight for her future, even if it means betraying the only friend, the only love she has ever known. So I feel like this was written by a really strong feminist. If you're a feminist, you're gonna absolutely love this book. It's all about like a different perspective on women's rights and how like women are literally treated like Barbie dolls and chosen by men to be their slaves to a degree, like how they trained in school their whole lives for 16 years aspiring to be a man's slave. Additionally, you've got The Rain by Virginia Virgin, don't know. 1 minute 16-year-old Ruby Morris is having her first proper snog with Casper McLeod in a hot tub, and the next she's being bundled inside the house, dripping wet, cold and in her underwear. Not cool. As she and Casper shiver in the kitchen, it starts to rain. They turn on the radio to hear panicked voices. It's in the rain. That was 2 weeks ago, and now Ruby is totally alone. People weren't prepared for the rain, got caught out in it, didn't realise that you couldn't drink water from the taps either. Even a drip of rain would infect your blood and eat you from the inside out. Ruby knows she has got to get to London to find her dad, but she doesn't know where to start. So basically, this book is like an apocalypse. Sort of virus gets into the rain, and if it rains and it touches you, you're gonna die, or if you drink it, you're gonna die. Things like that. Hate by Alan Gibbons. Eve's older sister, Rosie, always loved being the centre of attention. Then one day she is brutally murdered. 6 months later, Eve meets Anthony and discovers that he was there the night Rosie died, and he did nothing to help. Is there any way she can ever get past that? So as I believe this was based on a true story about her girl who was murdered in a hate crime, and how you have the right to dress as you want. It was basically this girl that dressed in a goth way got murdered based on the way she looked in the street one day, and that was a hate crime. It was all about the movement towards it being named as a hate crime. And finally, one author I always look to for new books to read is Kat Clark. One of the first books I read, which I absolutely loved, was Torn. Alice King isn't expecting the holiday of her dreams when she sets off on a trip to the wilderness with her mates, but when her best friend Cass decides to teach mean girl Tara a lesson, Alice finds herself in a nightmare she can't escape. Now Alice is the guardian of a secret too horrific to tell, and a secret too terrible to keep. A secret that will change all of their lives forever. So her books are always so dramatic. This one in particular I really would recommend. There are other books of hers that I wouldn't recommend. I would recommend reading them in terms of if you haven't got anything else to read them, because they're so easy to read and they're dramatic, they're going to keep you entertained. But for some of her books, I do feel like the endings are cop-out, specifically Undone. I got to the end of that book and I was like, I really wish I hadn't read it. I felt so frustrated with the ending. There you go, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Those are some of my favourite ever books. If you've read any, please let me know, and if you've got any of your own recommendations for me to read, drop them in the comments below. Bye!